Welcome to the NCFCA Online Summit. My name is Amy Joy Tofty, and it is my pleasure to serve as the Director of Education for NCFCA, the leading Christian speech and debate league. Since 2001, NCFCA has empowered Christian students to apply and communicate their worldview with skill and clarity through regional and national competitions supported by exceptional training and curriculum. Tens of thousands of students have learned to confidently communicate truth with grace. To meet your challenge, visit ncfca.org. Today, you are going to enjoy 30 minutes of live teaching, followed by a great giveaway from the SAT Prep Genius course and a scholarship to the Forge Leadership Summit. And then we'll finish our time together with a live Q&A session. And this week is just the beginning. If you're ready for the next challenge, then register for the NCFCA Online Intensive taking place next week, August 3rd through the 7th. You'll enjoy dynamic teaching, interactive breakout group activities, and instant feedback from coaches. And you'll leave with a step-by-step plan to prepare speeches or to prepare for debate. Our spaces are limited, so visit ncfca.org/intensive to register today. If you have questions about NCFCA resources or competitive opportunities, we want to invite you back this afternoon at 4 p.m. Central Time, and we'll have our national leaders here to answer your questions. If you need technical assistance during the session, email summittech@ncfca.org. And if you have questions about the specific material being presented in this session, then submit those questions by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. As parents, we invest in the lives of our children. We plant seeds, we water, weed, and prune, and eventually we get to see the fruit. In Galatians 6:9, the Apostle Paul writes, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." Investing in your children through Value Debate will reap a harvest. So press on, my friends. Value Debate opens a whole world where you're able to have conversations with your children about what ought to drive our decision making. In session 12, Parenting a Value Debater, you'll learn how to engage your students, how to engage local clubs, and to evaluate value debate. Our guest speakers today, I want to invite them on the screen here so that you can catch a sneak peek of them. We have Brenda Stortz. Brenda is a Region 10 NCFCA parent of 3 children. She serves as a team policy debate coach, a club leader, a summer debate camp leader, and she is the co-founder of New England Debate. And this fall, she'll even be starting a new club in Region 10. Christy Peters is also a Region 10 NCFCA parent of 4 children, and she serves as a Lincoln Douglas Value Debate coach and an apologetics leader. She's currently working with both national and NH federations of Republican women on a series of events celebrating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And Christy Shipe is the founder of NCFCA and a Region 9 NCFCA parent of 5 children. Mrs. Shipe authored the NCFCA Comprehensive Guides to Teen Policy Debate and Lincoln Douglas Value Debate, and she currently serves as the NCFCA board chair. So ladies, thank you so much for being here. Can you just give us an overview of what we're going to hear today? Brenda, what will you be speaking about?
So today I'm going to be talking about how you can get the most out of NCFCA debate in general and giving you some really practical tips in doing so.
That's great. And Christy, what will you be sharing?
I'm going to share some ideas for parents to engage with their children in the preseason and during the season.
I love that. And Christy, you're finishing up with?
How to judge value debate.
Yes, I know as a parent that is something that terrified me, and having the tools to do that will be so helpful for our family. So Brenda, I'm going to turn it over to you and you can get us started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy Joy. So today I just want to point all the parents out to the chat feature where you should be able to find a handout. And in that handout, you can take notes, jot down, use it however you feel best. But we're going to go over quite a few details, and I just want to make sure that you could capture some of those and take those home with you. So you can use those during the course of all of our presentations. So I know that parenting a student in NCFCA might seem like a big, overwhelming job, especially in this day and age when there are just so many different transitions to schooling, maybe online, and different ways of schooling. But getting involved in NCFCA has been for our family probably the very most rewarding thing that we have done in our homeschooling life. And so I really want to invite you to open your hearts to being really involved and engaged in NCFCA debate. Christy Shipe did a fantastic job in a previous session to teach us how the purpose of debate, how debate helps us to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, strength, and mind. And so really what debate is it is learning how to, it's a tool of critical skills that help you to hone cross-shaped thinking and communication. It's loving God as well as loving others. And so I really want to invite you and understand how really central NCFCA and our mission can be in raising your Christian students. And so the first step, the first takeaway I would like everybody to get from my talk here is that parents are absolutely essential to the NCFCA mission. NCFCA is an organization of parents. It's run by parents, and we are a community of parents not only in our clubs, but also in our region and also even out into the nation and extending back over 20 years to other parents who've come before us. And so your involvement is absolutely critical to that aspirational mission of helping our students to learn to think critically and communicate effectively. And I would encourage you to really dig into that right alongside your students. We know that there is a very strong correlation in school of parental involvement to their students' achievement. But I think we forget that actually the greatest reward for the parent, the family, the teachers actually happens when parents are fully engaged. And once you understand and really begin to think about how central critical thinking, cross-shaped critical thinking that's anchored in the truth of God and the person of Jesus and his word is, and how central communicating and being in relationship with others is, I think you can begin to understand that our mission in NCFCA is really not just for a certain subset of people, maybe people who want to train their students to be lawyers or people who want to train their students to become politicians. But it's really a skill set that's really essential for everybody from all walks of life and essential to helping you to train your students in whatever calling the Lord may have for them. So your involvement is critical. It will be a great reward to you, and it will be a great reward to your entire family. So it's absolutely central to understand our purpose here in NCFCA debate, and that is to nurture students to use debate as a quest for truth, rather than a tool to manipulate others or evaluate or elevate yourself. And so I think that if you haven't been familiar with debate from a Christian perspective, you might think debate is simply about winning rounds, but it's about much more than that. Debate is really about loving your opponent well enough to work together, and your judge well enough to work together with your opponent to try to put ideas, important ideas, values, morals, ethics, all kinds of really important thinking, right? And ideas, put those into the fiery furnace of competition and let all of the bad thinking, the bad logic, and the bad ideas bubble up to the top so we can skim that scum off and we're left with really good, true tested ideas. And so when we love our audience enough to speak their language instead of insisting they speak our own, when we are seeking to use debate as a tool to discover truth and to discover God's truth, when we are looking at life issues, important life issues, from the eyes of God's perspective, then debate becomes something much more than about winning rounds. So as you can see, our job really is to create this springboard that's going to help parents to train up their students to become lifelong cross-shaped thinkers and communicators. And parents benefit from that too, because people from age 8 to age 88, we are all on this journey together to become cross-shaped thinkers and cross-shaped communicators. So how do we do this in a way that we can really get the most out of this opportunity that NCFCA offers? And the first thing would be to simply invite debate into your family. You can simply have conversations around the dinner table, have conversations about America's founding, particularly when we're talking about Lincoln Douglas debate. Ideas from de Tocqueville and John Locke are going to be really central. And so if you haven't read some of those foundational works or haven't read them for a while, go ahead and revisit some of those books and help your students to revisit them. And you will find that there are wonderful opportunities to just engage together in a super meaningful dialogue. And it's really also that dialogue, that ongoing conversation can really just bless you with amazing relationships. I know I have really special relationships with my kids that kind of centered around our debate life together. So I really recommend fully inviting debate into your family. It's also extraordinarily helpful that as you enter into debate, you're going to see that it might seem like debate needs to compete with what you're already doing for school at home, but this doesn't necessarily have to be the case. It may very well be that your student will find debate so engaging, they'll become much more curious, and they will become independent self-learners. And that's what I really wanted. My husband and I really wanted that for our students. And so as we went along our journey, we discovered, we're going to have to kind of find some ways to make space, because this one thing that they are doing, debate, is really good. Not only that, but we also learned that that one thing helped my students in all of their other subjects, including math, which I never would have imagined that it would have helped us go through logical proofs. But you can imagine if you're going through logical syllogisms in value debate, that can translate into even geometric proofs. So your student can get credit for debate as generally either social studies or as English. And you can also decide to plan ahead and create some class opportunities for your student that will also augment debate. So you can take classes in philosophy, logic, economics, government, civics, all sorts of different classes that will really help your student along the way. It will help their debate. And as their debate, you may find that as they are getting more and more involved in debate, that they will have much better time management skills. If debate is something they really enjoy, they're going to make time for it in their lives. The research, the reading, the deep thinking, the critical analysis, the note-taking skills, and the listening really well to each other and respectfully considering somebody else's point of view in the very best light they can, those are all skills that will help them in every subject and in every area that they embark on. So it's been really a tremendous blessing, I know, to my oldest student who started debate when he was 16 and is now in college. So he can write papers really fast, and he's very organized and very thoughtful, and his arguments are super on point. So I think that when you begin to realize that it isn't necessarily debate, school plus debate, but maybe debate fits right in your school, that might be something that is very helpful for parents to think about. So as you invite debate into your family by having dinner table conversations, as you make room in your students' calendar for them to be able to engage in debate and do those extra couple hours of thoughtful work in debate, you also want to make room on your family's calendar so that you can regularly meet up with other local debaters. Debate is really best done when we get together with others, we get outside just our own mind, which is finite, and our own thinking on the books that we're reading and our own understanding and wisdom that comes from God. But when we can connect with others and share and collaborate, that is when our very best work really can come forward. So if you can find a club by going onto the ncfca.org website and clicking on Find a Club, there are clubs all over the country and hopefully one near you. And so you can go ahead and connect, join, and get involved that way. But if there's not, I really recommend that you go ahead and don't think that you need to be the expert in order to start a club or to help your student learn how to debate. You don't. I didn't know much at all about debate. And what I did know about debate wasn't entirely a positive experience because it was a very secular version of debate. So what you really want to do is connect with as many people, go ahead and feel free to learn right alongside your student, and then join with other parents who are doing the same thing. Again, that helps us to get outside of our own minds, work together, and share the gifts that the Lord has given us each in helping to facilitate those club meetings. So the question is, once that you have made room in your family for debate and fully embraced it, and that might take some time because we all have different roads that lead us to the aspirational goal of really what NCFCA is. You want to keep your end goal in mind. And our end goal is not competition. While we spend a lot of time in our clubs and in our families and in our curriculum preparing for competition, competition is just the foundational springboard to help parents meet that mission, to reason well, to communicate on life issues with the eyes of God's truth. And so that's a lifelong skill, and that's really what NCFCA is looking to build. So what is your goal and your role in doing that? Believe it or not, just like in most of life and most of parenting, it's to be your student's coach. And that thought might be a little overwhelming if you think you need to be an expert in debate. But as I've mentioned, you will learn so much about cross-shaped thinking yourself if you are open and you just take a very humble perspective that I can do this. And you learn side by side with your student. I know Mrs. Shipe's talk just before this that really gave an overview of the fundamentals of Lincoln-Douglas debate was a great lesson for me, even though I've been in the debate world for so long, and so applicable to life. So I really recommend going in and when your student is maybe signing up for the intensive next week, which I highly recommend, go ahead and sit in with them on those classes. You're going to get so much out of it, and you're going to be equipped to help your student by becoming their coach, by asking them questions, by teaching them how to ask questions, by giving your student feedback on their ideas and on their arguments, by checking their club assignments, and keeping them grounded in understanding that that all truth comes from God, and that is what this activity is seeking to do, is to help them to take all thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ. And grounding them in Christ is probably the most important role for parents to take in coaching their students. So I just want to remind you that parental involvement and engagement definitely contributes to higher student achievement, but it also contributes to higher club satisfaction, higher satisfaction in what you're getting out of what you're putting into an NCFCA. Your coaches are more satisfied, and you get much more parent satisfaction, and you're building this amazing community for yourself as well as for your students of parents who are all on this like-minded journey together. And you get to enjoy the camaraderie of those parents and really just take off on this wonderful journey and adventure that is NCFCA. So I invite you to go ahead and get involved. And I'm going to now hand you over to Christy Peters, who's going to give you some really practical tips on how specifically to be involved in your child's debate education, their value debate education.
Thank you, Brenda. So as you've just heard, parents play a crucial role in the education of the value debate students. So when we came to NCFCA in 2012, I was not familiar with Lincoln Douglas value debate at all. I was familiar with Lincoln and Douglas having a debate, but I had been a college policy debater, and to be honest, I wasn't overly aware that there was another way to do it. And so imagine my surprise when my 3 oldest students all opted for Lincoln Douglas as their preferred track. And initially I just sort of dropped them off and I really had no idea what they were doing. And then we ended up needing a Lincoln Douglas club leader. So I was the adult in the room while my teenage son was leading things along, and I learned to love Lincoln Douglas value debate. And so I have a few tips that I think could help you in your role as a value debate mom that will equip your student for the best possible experience and engage you in the process. So again, if you have that worksheet, I'll try to make sure that I help you with all those fill-ins. So first, before coming to debate, or in my case, as early as possible, lay the foundation for thinking in a value-based way. So the first suggestion I have for this is to teach your student basic philosophy with an emphasis on teasing out the value that motivates principles. This can sound terrifying, so it's a great place to bring in friends. This summer, a friend and I organized a philosophy group that consisted of 6 young ladies and 1 young man and their mothers. We chose Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics and worked through book 1 over 6 weeks. A recent NCFCA graduate facilitated the discussion for us and encouraged moms and their students to have deep conversations around our material, both at home and in club, so our meetups. We just finished up for the summer, and our young facilitator announced that she would love to do this again for us next summer. So my purpose in initiating this group was I saw the fear in my students and their parents in approaching the NCFCA reading list, and the objective was to model for our parents and students how to pick up a difficult piece of reading material, break it into manageable parts, and then find the values and principles in each piece. So in addition to exploring philosophy, include your student in ethical discussions whenever possible. This was my motive in choosing ethics for our first foray into philosophy, and it's surprisingly easy to work into daily conversation. So right now, is your family in favor or not in favor of wearing masks in public? What is the value behind your opinion? Talk about the different motives that come into play here. Consider the motives of people who might see it differently. These daily discussions are great opportunities to exercise critical thinking skills that will be helpful to the thoughtful debater. And third, consider a course in basic logic. This is also available in the NCFCA Value Debate Handbook. So if you don't have it worked into your homeschool already, there are 12 great lessons that will build you from very simple logic to some complex thoughts. This was a helpful resource for my own children, as well as our LD club for Snow Club. So again, the worksheet, it would be teach basic philosophy, include your students in ethical discussions, and consider a basic course in logic. So as we move into the pre-season, which I would consider the time between the announcement of the resolution and the first tournament, I've identified 5 ways that parents can partner with their students. So begin by looking at the resolution with your student. Consider current events that might relate or even provide examples for further discussion. Additionally, consider whether you might know of past examples that could enhance your students' understanding of the values surrounding the resolution. For example, our students might be too young to remember the media battle over Barack Obama's birth certificate, and they may not have been engaged enough to notice the issue of media requests over President Donald Trump's tax documents. So those might be some good examples that you could start a conversation over. So moving along from current events, read and encourage reading of the resources on the NCFCA reading list. This is a goldmine of materials assembled by those who have already dug deep into the resolution for your benefit. As club begins, and that certainly might look different this year, attend these meetings with your student. I would include being present as your student attends online camps this summer, such as the one Brenda and I will be hosting in a couple of weeks. These instructors are given the weighty privilege of helping your student evaluate the world in an ethical way, and you'll not want to miss the deep personal growth that happens here. As your student begins case writing, be a sounding board for ideas. Initiate discussions about how his value impacts his case. Listen for logical fallacies or incomplete logic and arguments. Lastly, consider hosting work sessions in your home. This is a great way to get to know the other competitors in your club and have relaxed conversations about the resolution. You may discover new ways of seeing the issue by hearing from the students. So last year, our club added a number of these gatherings. They happened in homes, church facilities, in cafes, and even online. It was an unexpected blessing to see students and parents engaging and pouring into each other. And one mom became so invested in her son's debate education that she's now headed off to coach LD for a brand new club this fall. So again, for our worksheet, look at the resolution with your student, read and encourage reading of resources on the reading list, attend debate classes or meetings with your students, be a sounding board for case ideas, and consider hosting work sessions in your home. As we move out of the preseason, the tournament season itself offers more excellent opportunities. Those casework meetups will begin to turn into practice debate rounds. Make yourself available to judge those and offer feedback. Another option is to offer to judge online practice rounds. Our family has primarily done this through Ziggy, which allows you to hear students from multiple regions. I noticed last spring, though, that as the viral pandemic cut us off from one another, that the students themselves began to make their own opportunities to extend the life of the resolution in mini tournaments, and parents were much needed to judge some of those rounds. The last, and truly one of the best, is to make yourself available to judge official tournament rounds. This is already a requirement of tournament participation, and I can tell you after multiple seasons assisting with ballot distribution, this is a valuable and very necessary contribution. It has the side benefit of giving you opportunities to hear from a variety of students. Each one will bring his own argumentation style to the round, expanding your appreciation of the many ways to logically lay out a case. Additionally, you will see the topic from many angles, and these will be a great discussion tool after the tournament. So again, if you're working through the worksheet, I'll just lay those two out for you, is to judge practice debates and to judge official tournament debates. Again, there are many opportunities to become involved in your child's debate education, and maybe this is overwhelming, and you certainly don't need to be involved in every single one of these, but these are some ideas that I've found very helpful in engaging my students and the parents of the students I coach. So I guess now we'll move along to Christy Shipe and how to evaluate the LD round.
Yes, great. Thank you, Christy. That was perfect setup because she was just talking about judging. It is something that we ask parents to do at our tournaments. And you might be thinking, how am I qualified to judge? I've never been a debater. I've never seen a debate. And I'm here to tell you, you are qualified to judge just by virtue of the fact that you are an adult. We want to train our students to be able to be persuasive and communicate clearly to any adult from any walk of life with any background. Some other leagues only use trained judges, but we have purposely chosen to use judges from all walks of life with no training whatsoever. Some of them do have training, but many of them do not, because we want our students to learn how to communicate in a real world type of way. You already make decisions. This is an election year. You're already evaluating communication from the candidates in order to make a decision of who to vote for. That's something that's common to our experience and the privilege that we have here in the United States. And that's the same type of experience that you would bring into the debate round. It's the same way you would make a decision in other parts of your life. So that is my primary message. If you take nothing else away, I want you to know you can do it. You are qualified. You can make a decision in a debate round just like you make a decision in life. It is the debater's job to make sense to you. They need to persuade you. So it's not your fault if they're confusing. That is not your fault. It should be clear. They should be using just normal, everyday language that you could understand. Their points should be organized. You should be able to follow it. And in the end, you should be able to know what you're voting for and why. That's their job. So if that doesn't happen, if you're confused, I just want you to know that is not your fault. Of course, you are likely to see some debaters who are new or young, and they're confused, and it will sound confusing. But again, that's not your fault, and you can give them some good feedback. We have ballots that judges fill out that you can give some written feedback, and you can just share in that written feedback the parts that were confusing, or some tips on how the debaters could improve. But that's the main message of how to judge value debate or any type of debate. You can do it. Let me go into a little bit of detail. I'm a little bit short on time, so I'm going to refer you to the recording of the last session, session 13, preparing for value debate. Will give you some more information just about what value debate is. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into this session to give you some ideas on how to vote, like how do you know which side to vote for. So there are two sides in the debate round, and they are arguing about a certain topic. We call that topic the resolution. And so this year's resolution is, in democratic elections, the public's right to know ought to be valued above a candidate's right to privacy. That's what you're going to hear the debates about. You're going to walk into the round and they're going to be arguing about the public's right to know versus a candidate's right to privacy in the context of democratic elections. So the two sides of the debate are the affirmative team and the negative team. In this style of debate, in value debate in NCFCA, we use a Lincoln-Douglas format, which means there is one debater on the affirmative side and one debater on the negative side. So you'll be making a decision between two individuals. Do you vote for the affirmative, who affirms the resolution? And so the affirmative will be arguing, yes, in democratic elections, the public's right to know ought to be valued above a candidate's right to privacy. And the negative is going to argue, in democratic elections, the public's right to know ought not be valued above a candidate's right to privacy. For those of you who might be familiar with policy debate, this is something unique to value debate. This is a difference between them. In policy debate, the burden of proof is on the affirmative team. And if you want more about that, you can refer back to an earlier session that we did yesterday. I believe it's session 11, or session 10 and 11 would be good to review there. So the burden of proof is normally on the affirmative in policy debate, but in value debate, the burden is equally on both the affirmative and the negative. They have equal burdens to prove their side of the resolution. So the affirmative team really needs to convince you that the right to know should be valued above the right to privacy. And the negative has the burden to prove the opposite, that the public's right to know ought not to be valued above a candidate's right to privacy. So here's the key question that you, as the judge, are asking. This is the key question. When there's a conflict between the public's right to know and a candidate's right to privacy within the context of a democratic election, should we generally prefer the right to know or the right to privacy? What should the general rule be? So the question of the debate round is not like, what are all the crazy exceptions off on the side? It's really general rule. And it's not a question of law. It's not a question of what laws should the government pass or what policies should government adopt. It's just a question of value. That what should we value? What should our default position be? Generally, I'm going to be in favor of more disclosure, more right to know for the public. Or am I generally going to be in favor of protecting a candidate's right to privacy? That's the question of the debate round. So now I'm going to refer to the handout that's part of this that was in the chat. There's a voting calculus there that has 3 categories in it. And this will help you to evaluate the round based on these 3 categories. So the categories are definition, standard, and justification. So these are questions you can ask of the round. Now, not all of these questions come into play every round, but this can be a helpful tool for you. So the first one is definition. Who does the best job of defining the resolution and what it really means and what's at stake? So for example, if the negative tries to say that the resolution means the public has the right to know everything about everyone in America, that's not accurate, right? The resolution is limited to candidates who are running for office. So in that case, you could vote against the negative team just for their lack of really giving a good understanding of what the resolution means. That's one issue that can come into play in a value debate round. Who really defines the topic well? Now, most of the time, they're both going to be defining the topic well, so usually that's one that you can just move on from and get into these other issues, which are, the second one is the standard. And this is a question of who presents the best way of evaluating the round. So the debaters are actually going to propose a standard by which you should judge the round. And that standard in value debate is the value itself. So for example, the affirmative might say, because of the value of democracy and our need to protect our freedom and public's right to choose their candidates, the public needs the right to know. So they're going to set that as the standard. Democracy and protecting democracy is the standard. But the negative might counter with, no, human dignity should be the value by which you should evaluate the whole round. Like, whichever side best upholds human dignity should be the standard. So the standard is a very important question in a value debate round. Who presents to you the most compelling value standard? And why should that particular value be preferred above others? Sometimes there's clash on this in the round. Sometimes the affirmative team gives a value standard and the negative says, yeah, that's great, I'll agree with that. And then, you don't have to make a decision. Other times they will disagree about what the standard should be, and then that might be a key issue in the round. The third way to evaluate the round is through justification. Which side, affirmative or negative, who does the best job justifying their position in the round? So regardless of the value standard, let's say they've argued about which standard it should be, and you've made up your mind one way or the other. Let's say you decide the affirmative standard is more compelling. The negative could still win by fulfilling that standard better. And so that's another thing that you want to take into account. Once you've settled on what the value standard should be, which side of the debate best fulfills and upholds and meets that standard? That's the justification question. So hopefully that voting calculus is helpful for you. And then I just want to briefly mention some other issues to look for in the round. What I just shared on the voting calculus is very specific to value debate itself and value debate theory. But there's other issues that come into play, just general issues. And they are, first of all, the logic of the argumentation that's being used by either side. So you really want to ask, who did the best job with logical argumentation? Who had the best support for their arguments? Who had the best answers and the most thorough answers to the questions and objections raised by the other side? Who had the clearest communication? Who was the easiest to understand? Who was the most organized in their presentation? Who had the most professional behavior? And hopefully they both behave wonderfully well and that doesn't become an issue. And then finally, this is really important. You're looking to judge for the person, you're looking to vote for the person who did the best job debating, not necessarily the person with whom you personally agree in real life. So you do want to try to set aside your bias if you already have one on this topic and really listen to the way the debaters engage with each other. They're not debating you, in your opinion, they're debating each other. And so you're evaluating how did they do against each other? How did they respond to each other's arguments? Who did the best job in all of those things that I just outlined? My final caveat is this is one way to judge debate. There are other ways, and ultimately you should vote for the team that you felt was the most persuasive.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Shipe. We appreciate you and all that you do for the league. And now we have our Director of Marketing, Mrs. Natalia Rosa, is going to give away some great gifts.
Hello, everybody. I am excited to announce our winners today. Our prizes come from LeTourneau University and HSLDA Online Academy. We're grateful to have a relationship with both of these organizations. LeTourneau University is a comprehensive institution of Christian higher education where educators engage learners to nurture Christian virtue, to develop competency and ingenuity in their professional fields, to integrate faith and work, and to serve the local and global community. And they are generously giving away one free dual credit course online. This also comes with the potential for a scholarship down the road if the student successfully completes that course. So a really generous and wonderful giveaway. And the winner of that is Moonjung Wee. You are the winner of that prize. So please email us at summittech@ncfca.org and we will connect you with LeTourneau so you can collect that gift. Our second giveaway prize is from the HSLDA Online Academy, and they help homeschool families through high school by offering live online courses in English and writing, math, science with labs, foreign language, government history, SAT prep, and more. You can learn more about them on their website, but they are giving away a free SAT prep genius course. And Miss Dixie Roram, you are the winner of that SAT prep course. So email us at summittech@ncfca.org and we will help you collect that prize. A few notes as we get to the end of the day and the end of our online summit. Many great resources were mentioned throughout this session. We'll be providing links to you via the follow-up email that comes to you each evening, but we've also put those links in the chat. And so if you haven't opened the chat box, I encourage you to do so. And I've linked their reading resources and the NCFCA white paper on the resolution, the NCFCA curriculum that is written by Christy Shipe for Value Debate is also available, and you can get free shipping when you order that this week of the online summit. The link for that is in the chat as well, so I encourage you to take advantage. And the final reminder is that our preseason affiliation discount ends tonight at midnight Central Time, and that preseason affiliation cost is $50 off the typical cost of $150. So what does that give you? It gives you the benefit of participation in NCFCA for your entire family. That year you can have all of the information about our tournaments and participate in tournaments near you. We'll also have online competition options this year. And you also get the benefits of great educational resources like this free online summit, like all of the great worksheets that we've linked for you in the chat, and also access to our partners like HSLDA Online Academy, HSLDA, and some discounts that they give to NCFCA families uniquely. So thank you for being here, and we can't wait to answer the rest of your questions.
That's great. I'd love to invite on the screen our other presenters. So Brenda and Christy, if you guys want to join us. We have some great questions today. Christy, I'm going to start with you. How can I help my child decide between policy and value debate?
And is that me or?
Oh, we have two Christys. Mrs. Shipe, why don't you take
okay,
that
you can
one?
say Mrs. Shipe, that's good. So deciding between policy and value debate. So depends a little bit on the age of your child and just cognitive abilities as well as their interests. Generally, so value debate is far more abstract and philosophical, and policy debate, although still challenging, but it's more concrete and practical. So if you've got a concrete, practical child, I would recommend policy debate. If you've got a philosophical, deep thinker kind of child, I think value debate is excellent for them. Just in general, abstract thinking on average doesn't develop fully until about age 16. So in general, younger students tend to do better with policy debate to start, and then moving into value as that cognitive ability develops.
Very good. And are there any key tips that you can give to folks who have done policy debate as they shift into value debate? So Brenda, why don't you tackle that one? I know one particular user wanted to know if somebody's really data-based, and so they're used to just presenting those hard numbers, those hard statistics. How do you help them transition to really get down to that value level?
Sure. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges for team policy debaters. They're used to handling lots of evidence, and that's the concrete side that Mrs. Shipe was talking about. Whereas in Lincoln Douglas, your students, instead of necessarily spending time online researching and cutting and snipping from all kinds of different articles, they're going to do much better to get that deep thinking going, to do much better by just going in and digging into maybe some really good books and thinking about it. So maybe this year, starting with de Tocqueville and Locke in terms of this particular resolution, but really as you begin to get your mind ready to start thinking about all of the moral, ethical values that underpin what we're the issues that we are the two good issues that we're putting in conflict in our resolution, right? That kind of thinking really requires a different skill set. So that would be the first piece that I would add to switching from TP to LD.
That's great. And so Christy Shipe, as we think about resources, I know that you have written just a fantastic curriculum, the comprehensive guide to value debate. Tell us a little bit what our people could expect if they purchase that product. What are they going to find inside that curriculum?
Yeah, so it's a 12-week course of value debate theory that walks you all the way through how to prepare your case, how to approach it, just the thinking and researching like Brenda was talking about, and even how to prepare for a tournament. It's also accompanied by 12 logic lessons to help hone that logical philosophical thinking in the context of value debate. There is a coach's guide. It's called Coach's Guide, but don't let that scare you off from buying it if you're just a parent, because it is comprehensive in that it really is designed to hold your hand through teaching the entire book. So there's answers to all of the questions, there's quizzes with answer keys, there's activities for every week, and all of the answers and tips are in there to help you guide your student through that curriculum.
That's great. Christy Peters, you mentioned some resources. Can you just talk about those again? So you had a club and you went through Aristotle's Ethics. Do you have other philosophy books that you would recommend?
I think we're going to go with Marcus Aurelius next year, but again, I would echo some of what Brenda had said. We've talked about those resources a little bit. And then again, just on the NCFCA website, that's where I would hit first, is to look at those resources that are listed in the Lincoln Douglas Value Reading List.
That's great. Excellent. So let's talk about credit. So I know some of our listeners are homeschoolers, and so they're wondering if their student can earn credit by participating in this activity. Brenda, do you want to take that?
Absolutely. So as homeschoolers, you get to choose how you decide to give your student credit on their transcripts. And so often you can count it as an English, often it will be, rhetoric, or I've even given them, credit, half a credit for rhetoric for 1 year and maybe a half a credit the next year as they're participating in it. But you can also give them a half credit of philosophy. It really just depends on how much work your student is doing, whether it meets really a full requirement for a half credit or a full credit. And so there are a variety of different ways to do that, but that might be one way.
That's fantastic. Christy Shipe, can you talk to us a little bit for a new family who's just getting started? Give us a bird's eye view of a year. What does the year in value debate look like?
So typically you're starting in the fall, like you start your regular school season. And what I like to do is really teach the course, like use the curriculum and do the 12 weeks as a course in the fall. And that might take you a few hours a week to work through for 12 weeks. Take the winter break for Christmas. And then in January is when the debate tournaments begin for NCFCA. And so at that point, I would encourage you to go to at least one tournament. Because you cannot learn debate from a textbook. You actually have to debate. So there are also usually opportunities in the fall to practice debate at smaller things that, you know, maybe just 2 rounds on a Saturday or something like that. Our tournaments typically tend to be 2 or 3 days and involve 6 rounds of debate. But let me tell you, having to debate back to back 6 rounds, it is the best way to learn. And so at least one tournament during that January to June tournament season. But, you know, 2 or 3, I typically do 2 or 3 tournaments in the tournament season, and then maybe if they qualify to regionals, 1 more. That's enough to learn the skill really well.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Christy, can you tell us a little bit about clubs? So how often do clubs meet? What does a typical club look like?
Is that me, Christy, or?
You, Christy Peters. My apologies.
So I've seen it done so many different ways as part of a homeschool co-op, or we actually in Snow Club this year are going to run it 2 different ways. So last year we went through the curriculum, which I had planned a shameless plug in the end, but I didn't quite have time. And so it was just the greatest thing to walk through that, and then anything you had missed in logic building or case building. So those students, many of them now, we will meet in a home, just a small group of us, and work immediately on case building as soon as we start club. And we'll meet 3 out of 4 weeks, so every Thursday evening. But for Snow Club, our main campus, we're going to go back and work through the curriculum 1 more time for our new LD debaters. And that will be every other week.
That's great. And we do also have quite a few Christian schools that are joining us now too. So I just want to say to all of you who might attend a Christian school, there are several ways to incorporate speech and debate into your school. It could be a class. So you could run a separate class for speech and a separate class for debate, or you also could have it as an extracurricular activity where your students meet after school. So if you have questions about that, please feel free to contact me. My email address is amyjoytofty@ncfca.org, and we'll put that in the chat. And I would love to talk to any of you who are attending Christian schools. So let's go a little bit to the other side of the coin. What do I do if there's no club at all in my area? So Christy Shipe, can you just touch on that a little bit?
Well, that's how this whole league started 20-something years ago, was just talking some parents into doing this with their kids at home. So it clearly works, because here we are 20 years later and have grown tremendously. This is something you can learn alongside of your student. You really can get the textbook and figure it out. You only have to be like 1 page ahead of them. Figure it out together. But also there are some opportunities to connect to online.
Yes.
There are some online clubs out there. So you can get some support from people online, especially this year when everything's going online. But I do want to just encourage parents that they can learn this and do this together with their student.
That's really how we started. So, you know, you can take that curriculum and you can go through those lessons at home with your children, and you'll learn some great things even to use in your own communication. So I would really encourage you to take a look at that. Is there a specific book that any of you would recommend to look at for this year's topic? So what are your favorites?
I think we already mentioned a couple of them. The Second Treatise on Civil Government by John Locke is good. Thomas Jefferson has some good stuff. But also, I'll mention one that hasn't been mentioned yet. This is in the white paper resource specific to this topic on our website. It's Warren and Brandeis's article from a law review in the late 1800s called The Right to Privacy. So typically what you're going to find in this year is you're going to find material that's about the public's right to know and their investment in democracy. that's going to be separate from other material that's going to be about the right to privacy. And you're going to see right to privacy material really from post-Civil War writers. It's a newer concept, although it's based on some older ideas. And then I would say founding fathers and stuff from the 16 and 1700s on just the principles of freedom and democracy are really helpful on that other side.
That's great. As students are researching, do you have any counsel for parents in just guiding them and directing them, making sure that you guard their hearts? What does that look like when you're doing research? Brenda, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I think that unlike working in team policy, the research resolution over that side, I think there's a little bit less concern when you're talking about these big ideas and founding ideas that we're really talking about. And so while, you know, the current events that might be surrounding this idea and that might be the application, that might have some kind of interesting twists and turns that you might have to guard. I think in general, if you're just taking everything into the full counsel of God's word and the person of Jesus Christ, I think in general you're going to be pretty well off. There are some tools you can use online to help guard what they're seeing online. I do recommend, if they're doing research outside and online, to maybe use something like Google Scholar to make sure they're getting those scholarly level articles. But again, our league is aimed at high school students, and Lincoln Douglas probably lends itself, as Mrs. Shipe talked about, to a more mature brain set. So I think in this area, maybe a little less caution than on the team policy side.
That's great.
I also
And
just
Chris-
want to add another resource. I would say to read John Stuart Mill's On Liberty would be really helpful, and has a particular section about how much does the public have a right to know.
Well, that's great. Excellent. Thank you for that. Christy, I have one last question here about if my child wants to become a lawyer, should they lean toward policy or should they lean toward value debate?
Are you asking me, Christy, or
Christy Shipe.
Okay. I think either one, truly either one. Again, it probably depends more on the practical versus the philosophical bent, but value debate teaches logic so strongly. As I can't remember if it was Brenda or Christy talked about how it even helped with math and mathematical proofs. That's so true. I found that to be true as well. But if your child is more interested in politics and the particulars there, like what laws and policies should our government put into place, then I would say, policy debate. I couldn't remember for a second. I'm getting tired.
I was thinking, yes, they should do both.
Oh,
Do both.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too, because you get the policy and the proof to back it up, but then you also have the value and how it works out in abstract examples.
Yes.
And the
yeah.
value really underlies, so values
Absolutely.
drive decision making. So if you understand the values as a foundation, and then that informs the policy decisions. So they go together so well.
They do. So again, you can compete within the same calendar year in different events. That's pretty challenging to do. So most people commit to one style of debate for a whole calendar year, but across the 6 years that your child is eligible to compete, I would strongly encourage as a parent to challenge them to do both at some point in time in their career. So my oldest son loved policy. He just loved policy debate. And so for 5 years, he competed in policy. And his final year, he switched to value. And he said, oh, this is so much fun. So I think you will find that most kids like the variety, and it's great to have an opportunity to do both. So I do want to thank all of you so much for attending today. Mrs. Shipe, Mrs. Peters, Mrs. Stortz, thank you so much for your wisdom and your counsel. We appreciate you. And parents, if you would like to know more about NCFCA, we are going to return this afternoon at 4 p.m. Central Time, right here on this same link, to answer any questions that you might have about getting involved with the league. So please feel free to come back and join us. Ladies, have a great day. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank
you.